As 2021 came to a close, the website dictionary.com chose the popular social justice term allyship as its word of the year. And while that word is bandied about a great deal, even those who use it don't always mean the same thing. So, joining us now for more on that, we welcome in Montreal, Quebec, Danny Jo Otu, Director of Communications for the nonpartisan youth advocacy organization Apathy is Boring. In Vaughan, Ontario, researcher and community organizer Ariana Maliocco. In the provincial capital, in Kensington Market, cultural critic Sarah Barzak, who's a director at the London School of Racialized Leaders. And in Greektown, high school student Isaiah Shafkat, who is the Indigenous Student Trustee at the Toronto District School Board. And it's great to have you four with us here on TVO tonight. I want to start just because I don't want to assume that our audience, for some of them, this is going to be a new term. And I want to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about here when we talk about allyship. And it may mean different things to different people. So let's start. Danny Jo, to you, it means what?
To me, allyship, amongst many other things, really is a question of decentering, or folks with a privileged identity, decentering their needs and oftentimes, their opportunities and financial gains in order to center and acknowledge the needs of the most marginalized.
Okay, Ariana, how about you?
I would say that allyship is identifying where your skills, resources, and power can be utilized to support the work of people who are already engaging in political, social activism around their own lived experience, and then actioning on that on an ongoing basis.
Sarah.
I think Danny Jo and Ariana hit some really great points in terms of identifying power, positionality, and marginalization. I would also add that allyship also exists in the micro intimacies. It exists in how we conduct our relationships to one another. And I'm also interested in how allyship exists in the context of friendships. Micro intimacies meaning what? The small actions, I'd say in my own personal experience, I went through a housing crisis actually over this pandemic for 10 weeks. And that is a form of class oppression in some ways, or classism, if we think about it, socioeconomic disparities. No one could actually change my situation, but allies came forward to me as friends, being able to ask me if I was fed, offering me a place to stay. Danny Jo was one of those folks who was a real ally in that moment by being just a really great friend. So I don't always think it exists in the form of protest. I think it exists in the form of just showing up for one another.
Gotcha. Okay. Isaiah, what would you add to what we've heard so far?
Just reiterating that allyship is decentering oneself on an issue, and also accepting that you will not have all the answers or the lived experience to accurately know how an issue affects a group. And it's also willing to be uncomfortable and accept that historically one's ancestors may have been perpetrators of the injustices that we witness and face today. And it's also always being willing to learn and gain a deeper understanding of an issue.
Okay, Danny Jo, coming back to you, because I suspect a lot of people watching this right now and listening to it on podcast first heard the term allyship as it related to the protests around Black Lives Matter. And I wonder whether, in your view, the term has taken on a different meaning since the BLM protests took place.
Absolutely. I think in general, our collective consciousness and awareness of the word in and of itself has greatly changed since the Black Lives Matter movement took a rise. I actually also think that in some ways the term has lost some of its significance and maybe been interpreted differently. And I think that, in some cases, some people thought that posting a black square on Instagram would be enough and identify as an action of allyship. And sometimes that's just not enough. And so I think that the ways in which it's changed are both good and bad. We've become more aware of what it means to be an ally, but sometimes we stay stuck in performative allyship and actually forget that true allyship requires us to oftentimes, like as I mentioned earlier, take a loss. So say no to a gig and, share the microphone, share a platform, decenter ourselves in order to amplify another's voice.
It's more than just pushing the like button on Facebook is what you're saying.
Yeah, like or share.
Like or share. Got it. I want to read something here that Sarah wrote in a passage in an essay that she's been working on. And it starts like this. I wonder, she writes, would there be a word for allyship if we all chose to love and care with intentionality? Would there be a word for allyship if we reevaluated our understandings of friendship? Okay, Sarah, you've asked some good questions there. You got any good answers for us?
Yeah, so that essay was inspired by just a lot of reflections I had. One in which I just mentioned previously, I was displaced for 10 weeks, and I was really reflecting on my friendships that really came through in that time and kind of what love and care meant. A lot of it was inspired by the work of Bell Hooks, who has recently passed. She is a Black feminist who has informed a lot of my views on love and connection and how we conduct our interpersonal relationships with intentionality and care. So when I really dug into it, allyship in its everyday context exists in its friendships. It exists in the small actions of micro intimacies. It exists in, being able to check in on each other and being able to show up for one another. Protests and saying no to a gig or sharing the mic, those are all very, very important actions. But I feel like in order for us to have a sense of collective solidarity and unionship, it has to really exist in kind of these small actions for us to be very intentional in how we conduct our day-to-day relationships.
Sarah, I don't want to invade your privacy here, but you are a guest on a television show, and twice now you've mentioned the fact that you found yourself in a precarious situation in terms of your housing for a very long period of time. You want to tell us how that happened?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a very unique story. I think if anything, it kind of garnered my Toronto credentials. It started off with a landlord dispute. And that's very, very common here in Toronto. And of course, with the cost of housing and precarious work in the middle of a pandemic, I'm definitely not unique in this experience. And so what had happened was my roommates and I were forced to break our lease, and I didn't have a place to stay. So I was basically house hopping, couch surfing for a number of weeks while also, living my life. I still had a job to do. I was still appearing on different platforms such as CTV for election night while still sleeping on couches. And it just so happened that even the next apartment that I had locked had also run into another pest problem, which prolonged my displacement from 4 weeks to 10 weeks.
But you're okay now.
I'm okay now. Everything's great now, but I've had a lot of support. And it came in these ways in which friends had really shown up for me and checked in on me and offered me a place to stay or, offered to send me care packages, things like that.
Great. Isaiah, let's get you back in here. September 30th, 2021, the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. So I want to ask, what does being an ally for Indigenous people in Canada look like to you?
It really just looks like educating oneself and using a platform that they have to raise Indigenous voice, to amplify those voices and not take away from that. And it's learning through school, through Indigenous people specifically. Like, we are still here and we still have a voice, and I think that's often ignored.
Amplifying as opposed to taking away. How does that work?
So instead of then taking an Indigenous person's story or lived experience and telling that, you bring an Indigenous person in and give them the platform to tell their own story from a first-hand perspective.
Gotcha. Okay, Ariana, where are we going to go here? I want to read something now that you wrote. This is for your master's thesis in social justice education at the University of Toronto. and you look at a phrase commonly used by Italian Canadians, of which you are one. And okay, Sheldon, let's bring this graphic up and I'll read this along. I'm not white, I'm Italian is a commonplace statement amongst the community of Italian Canadians I grew up with. It was a statement I can remember saying defensively as a teenager. I believe that we must speak about our collective power as white Italian Canadians in community with one another. All right, let's hone in on that phrase there. I'm white, I'm not white, I'm Italian. What are the issues around that that made you want to write about that?
Yeah, well, I think that the issues really emerged for me, especially during the summer of 2020, when the conversations around white privilege and white supremacy were really elevated to a mainstream conversation. And I began reflecting on this statement that I'd heard within our community, I'm not white, I'm Italian. And I realized if there are so many Italian Canadians who hold so much power, who don't see themselves as white, then these conversations that are finally being elevated to the mainstream are going right over their heads. And so it was really important for me to start interrogating where this idea comes from and how a familial and ancestral history of migration, and in many cases, exclusion from Anglo-Canadian mainstream upon arrival in Canada, has been used as a sort of shield from accusations of racism, or as a way to say, well, I was oppressed too, and so, fill in the blanks. Either I don't have responsibilities to address the ways that I still participate in white supremacy and settler colonialism, or I can sort of wash my hands and say, well, I made it, and so why can't others?
All right, I take your point, but let me follow up with this. The fact is, if you're a person of a certain age, and I might be in that age, closer to my age than your age, let's put it that way, there were many Italian Canadians who, particularly all over the country, were treated like second-class citizens. And if you are a person in your 60s, 70s, or 80s right now, and you're an Italian Canadian, can you understand why they may not want to join in your notion that they are somehow white oppressors as opposed to having been oppressed themselves?
Yeah, well, I think you actually raise a really good point, and that's what I think is so important about the community organizing I do with Italian Canadians for Black Lives. Here's the thing. The experiences of discrimination, of exclusion are very real. But the way that we honor my family's history with that is not by participating in the same systems which caused them harm. What's more is the reason that Italian Canadians were able to achieve the sort of collective power and upward mobility that they did was because of their proximity to whiteness. The fact that we have light skin color privilege is what helped us to gain the kind of power that we have. And so I really, really believe that if we actually care about those hurt, about those experiences, about that trauma, we do something by making sure that no one has to experience that again, not by becoming the people that we, believe hurt our families.
Danny Jo, I wonder how you react to that. The notion that if you're white, you potentially can't quite see the kind of advantages you've had, even if you've been disadvantaged or treated like a second-class citizen in the past. How do you work out all that in your head?
I think when we're having these conversations, it's important to maybe reiterate that privilege is not the notion that you haven't had to fight for where you're at. It's the notion that there are certain difficulties or barriers that you don't have to face because of a certain identity. And so I also think it's important that when we speak of privilege, we decenter a little bit racial privilege, because yes, that's a very main and probably the biggest one. But then there's also privilege that identifies, or that happens at different levels of intersections. And so, I am a educated Black woman. That gives me privilege over non-educated Black folks from the LGBTQIA community. A white heterosexual male has privileged over a white queer male. And so I think that identifying privilege as the experiences that we haven't had to live because of our identities already softens the conversations a little bit and releases the tensions, and also allows folks to realize which identities serve them in ways that they don't necessarily serve other people.
Let me do a follow-up with you on this, because I can imagine a 55-year-old white male who's homeless. I don't know that that person feels that they have privilege over a very well-educated young Black woman. Do you see that?
Absolutely. I absolutely do see that. That's why, for me, over the course of the pandemic, I've been extremely loud about homelessness and precarious living, because that's a privilege that I have I've had to experience, and it's a barrier that I haven't had to live. And so I'm using my platform and my voice to advocate for homelessness in ways that I would hope that others with, intersecting identities that have privilege over mine do the same.
Okay, let me introduce something here called Blackout Tuesday, which again, and Sheldon, let's bring this graphic up and we can read along. Hashtag Blackout Tuesday made visible the sheer number of people who had otherwise been silent on issues of racial justice. However, I found myself wondering, imagine if the number of people who posted a black square showed up fully in support of Black and Indigenous peoples. Ariana, you wrote that, so I'm coming back to you. Let's just do a little bit of background here. Blackout Tuesday is what?
Blackout Tuesday was a social media trend that actually emerged out of a different campaign, The Show Must Be Paused, which was a very specific effort to draw attention to racism within the music industry. It ended up gaining huge amounts of popularity. And as many people might know, it resulted in a lot of people taking to their social media platforms to post a black square, signaling solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement.
And did you think it was a real thing, or did you think it was showbiz?
I think that it was a way to identify yourself as somebody who was an ally in the least effective way possible, or in a way that required very little actual action. I don't think that posting the square itself is the problem. I think the problem is when people thought that the work of engaging in conversations around anti-racism started and stopped with an Instagram post that largely had very little context at all.
All right, let's get some more views on that. Sarah, what did you think of Blackout Tuesday?
I definitely felt it was very performative. Suddenly folks who I know very, very little, or even discuss racial inequalities, are suddenly putting all these black squares. To me, it felt like just a big hurrah online. And I don't know, I'm a non-Black racialized person, so I can't speak to the experience of anti-Blackness, but as a racialized person, I still felt that it didn't feel genuine or like intentional or authentic in its actions.
Isaiah, part of it was designed to create solidarity with Indigenous people as well. Did you feel it on your end?
So the post, I felt, was very performative. So it was people who didn't actively engage in anti-racism. And so it wasn't really, there was no solidarity. Indigenous people, at least in my experience, we didn't feel any real connection to this, as, again, it was performative and it really didn't benefit Indigenous or Black folk.
Danny Jo, how about you?
I mean, I think everything's been said. I think
it's interesting. Nobody thought of this as the genuine thing, eh? Nobody thought, wow, isn't this great? These people are all showing how they want to be allies of ours, and I'm really impressed with that. You didn't take that away, eh?
And I also think there's a difference between intention and impact with these conversations. And so while I genuinely believe that a lot, and if not most, of the post's intention was sincere, I think we need to start evaluating impact when we have these conversations. So, the road to hell, as we all know, is paved with great intentions. And so I think the first question with anyone, who's trying to follow such social media trends is, what is the impact of this going to have? And sometimes, posting a black square, if you're not active on social media, is completely null and void versus, a conversation that you can have at home versus getting engaged in, if you're an artist in your own, artist community. I think people need to find their own lanes for change as opposed to kind of following and anticipating what others are doing. And only then will we be able to move the needle, move the dial a little bit further.
Sarah, is it possible to interpret this as saying, I learned something on social media that I didn't know before, and even though it's not actual activism, it's just sort of putting something on my radar screen, did you think maybe it can lead to something more concrete?
I think there's, on a very superficial level, I think there is value in its symbolic value in terms of raising awareness. Perhaps someone who had never engaged with these issues is now overwhelmed with seeing all these black squares, and that curiosity leads them into their journey into anti-racism, right? So I think that it can potentially plant seeds, but I definitely think that it's just a preliminary marker to do your own self-exploration and your own kind of heavy lifting, or our own heavy lifting, myself included.
So Isaiah, when you saw, as I presume you did, when you saw the social media campaign and you saw the little black squares at the end of the tweets, did it do anything for you?
No, it may have planted a seed, but there was no real information in it. Some people put hashtags with it that were like hashtag Black Lives Matter, but that didn't give anyone information or didn't direct anyone to a source that could help them further their own education and knowledge on anti-racism, specifically anti-Black racism.
Okay, let's move along here. And I want to raise another issue with you folks, and that is intersectionality and community. And I think, again, I never like to assume that everybody understands, who's watching or listening right now, that they understand all the terms that we talk about on this program. So let's, and Isaiah, I'll start with you. Intersectionality means what?
In the most simplest way, it really means just identities that interconnect with one another. So someone who is Indigenous and queer, they have an Indigenous queer intersectionality, and their lived experiences would be a bit different from an Indigenous person who is cisgendered and heterosexual.
And I presume you didn't pick that example out of left field. I presume there's a reason you picked that example.
Yeah, so in my own lived experience, I am Two-Spirit and Mi'kmaq, which means I intersect with Indigenous identity and queer community. And so my lived experience would be very different from an Indigenous person who does not know anything about gender diversity.
A different experience, but take the next step. Do you feel you are particularly more discriminated against because of this intersectionality of your being?
Well, within the Indigenous community, we are very gender positive. Traditionally, we did not have gender-specific rules or roles besides perhaps caring of the home and gathering food. And so I know generally I do sometimes feel, especially within the school community, I'm a bit polarized or ostracized because I do present as someone who is perhaps queer or Two-Spirit, and people don't really know what that means sometimes. And so I often find myself having to explain what Two-Spirit is and why that's significant to my identity.
And do you feel you're ostracized within the Indigenous world as well?
Not often in the urban Indigenous community, but part of colonialism is pushing gender roles and colonial ideologies on Indigenous people. So you can really see the homophobia or transphobia within more rural Indigenous communities.
All right, Ariana, let me get you back in here. And again, in this attempt to sort of create allyship, which is the focus of our discussion here, you told us earlier you are a member of Italians for Black Lives Matter. Now tell us about how that came about and how it's sort of influenced your thinking on things.
Yeah, so Italian Canadians for Black Lives was a collection of Italian Canadians specifically living in Vaughan who came together to action on some of the calls for allyship and solidarity that we'd heard from Black Vaughan residents, community activists. And it was really an attempt to mobilize our community and have really important intracommunal conversations with white Italians and white Italian Canadians who hold a huge amount of power in the city of Vaughan, whether that be from our city councilors, our mayor, our school board officials, our business owners. And so we really saw a need to speak to this huge power base and organize as a community in support of our other community members.
And how is that mission going?
I mean, I would say that it's going quite well. I think we're always looking to learn and grow, but we have had some really great successes in partnership with other organizations. Of mention, as a result of a lot of work on the part of Black community organizations like Anchor Coalition, Parents of Black Children, and Black Lives for Change. A school in Vaughan named Vaughan Secondary School was renamed. And for those who don't know, Vaughan is named after a man named Benjamin Vaughan, who was an enslaver and parliamentarian who fought against abolition. And so Italian Canadians for Black Lives really worked with these community organizations to bring these conversations to the community, to speak at town halls, to write letters, to make phone calls, because this was an ask that was identified by Black community members in Vaughan.
Danny Jo, how do I put this? Are you feeling the love? Do you think this is working?
I think it is working. I think that there's a lot of work to be done. However, I think, this work is a marathon, not a race. It's important to look back and acknowledge the progresses that we've made and the conversations that are happening and the Googling that's happening as a result. It doesn't stop there, obviously. And so I'm hoping that the last 2 years will serve as pedestals from which, we can collectively learn a little bit more about how to show up, for one another in community, which was your initial point. And in solidarity.
How do you know, Danny Jo, if it's the real thing? How do you know if it's genuine allyship or if it's rather, and I'm obviously not alleging that in this case, but, there are all sorts of people or companies or organizations or institutions out there that are doing this strictly for the bottom line or strictly for good public relations purposes, but maybe not because they genuinely in their bones are into allyship. How can you tell the difference?
That's a great question. And I actually did a post on that the other day. I think there are kind of three markers for me in terms of it. Let's talk about brands specifically. I think continuous conversations around the lived experiences of folks from a particular community. So be it the Black community, be it the Indigenous community, be it the Asian Canadian community, who's also been going through quite a lot of anti-racism. And so I think acknowledging and continuous conversations throughout the year, and not just, for Black History Month and for Indigenous Month, one, shows genuine solidarity. I think number two, if you're going to be working with folks and if you're going to be, asking for the time and the labor of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, paying them for their work is another form of genuinity for me. If you're not just asking folks to do free emotional labor that can re-trigger some trauma for them. And then the last point is, in addition to talking about the suffering and the pain, and I think just celebrating and having instances of joy, and talking about Indigenous healing, talking about supporting Indigenous entrepreneurship, centering Indigenous voices at the heart of the environmental movements who they have been spearheading. So I think there's other ways also than just, difficult, hard conversations. It doesn't have to be this exhausting all of the time. And knowing when to kind of shift gears, all the while decentering yourselves, is for me the biggest marker of sincerity.
Gotcha. Sarah, in our just remaining moments here, I want to raise the issue of language, because I'm going to guess that some of the words and or expressions we've heard in the last half an hour during the course of our discussion are words that many of our viewers will have never heard before. And let's acknowledge off the top, I think more of our viewers are closer to my age than your age. And they've never heard expressions like micro-intimacies and intersectionality. And in fact, probably before last year or the year before, they'd never heard the word allyship before either. I'm not saying this to be critical. I'm just saying that's the way it is. How much obligation do you, Sarah, as somebody who is trying to create more allyship in this world, how much obligation do you feel to speak in a language that the people you want to bring in as your allies can understand, as opposed to using vocabulary that your generation gets, but maybe others don't?
I think accessibility is very important by all means, right? We want to be able to cross communicate and kind of share knowledge in that way. There are some terminologies that you kind of just can't zoom across. So intersectionality actually came out of the 80s by a Black legal scholar named Kimberly Crenshaw. So Kimberly Crenshaw's work has been around a long time in academia, but it's now transcending more into kind of this mainstream vocabulary amongst our generation. But I still think that words like that, while they need to be defined and shared, I don't necessarily think there's another word to replace intersectionality. So I think that the work has to kind of hold on to that integrity of like using the specific language around intersectionality, community, solidarity, allyship. I think these words are just words we have to further investigate and perhaps make more accessible through its definitions. But I think the word has to still exist in our vocabulary.
So Ariana, I guess, let me see if I can put it this way. So the older generations, it's incumbent upon them too to at least meet you halfway and acknowledge that there are going to be new ways of describing these things, new understandings that are required. And I'm trying to figure out how to bridge that generation gap. I'm trying to figure out how to get both sides talking to each other in a language both sides can understand. So I'm hearing from Sarah that there are some words that, I'm sorry, you older folks are just going to have to, you're going to have to open your minds and you're just going to have to give this a try. Is that it?
Yeah, well, I think that that's actually what can emerge when you build intra-generational or intergenerational communities, right? Where you have opportunities to talk with people of an older generation and explain your perspectives and then, hear from them, these are the things I don't understand about it. And that actually can help us to refine the language that we use to talk about this. So I think that it is about meeting each other where we're at, and working together to help each other as lifelong learners. Our generation also my generation doesn't know everything. There's a lot that we have to learn. And I think the point of community building is saying, like, let's learn and together, let's figure this out as a community.
Meeting each other where we're at. That is an expression I can get my head around. I want to thank the four of you for coming on to TVO tonight for a really fascinating discussion. Ariana Malliocco, Danny Jo Otto, Isaiah Shafkat, Sarah Barzak. Great to have you on TVO, you four. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.